influences are basically there's something about that person in your life
Mm-hmm.
that you admire, that you aspire to be. And because you aspire to be that, you start to see maybe things
Mm-hmm.
that they have done that you want to emulate to be the person you aspire to be. Welcome back to another episode of the Parenting Potential Podcast. My name is Charles,
And I'm Monet.
and we actually did not have this particular topic lined up to discuss this time around, but my grandmother recently passed away, and we felt that it was perfect timing to just do this episode. Now, it was very unfortunate for me and my family um, to lose my grandmother, but in coping with the loss, or how I coped with the loss, or I am coping with the loss, is taking the time to just reflect on all the positive things about my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And so this episode is titled Positive Generational Influence.
Mm-hmm.
Positive Generational Influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we tend to hear about generational curses a lot. It's something that people discuss when thinking about some characteristics that they find in themselves or how their family structure is. And when you think about generational curses, you would be remiss to not appreciate those generational blessings, or what we're going to refer to as positive generational influences as well. And before we even talk about it in that way, it's thinking about what is an influence in generations. So, Charles, in your own words, when you think about generational influences, what does that mean to you?
Think about habits.
Mm-hmm.
Think about mindset. There's a couple of things I think about, but
Mm-hmm.
primarily I think about the habits, the traditions, the morals, the ethics that have been um, that shape your life,
Mm-hmm.
right? That
Yeah.
shape and form how you are as an individual.
Yeah. And when it comes to that generational component of it, I think of it as a very unconscious or subconscious undertone
Mm,
that gets passed down. And so your ancestors or your descendants may not even realize or really comprehend that these are things that are impacting people throughout the years, but it's an influence nonetheless.
yeah,
So the curses, we're not going to touch on that or really focus on that.
because we're all about positivity here, y'all. That's not going to
That's
help you. There is a
right.
reason why you probably want to focus on those and
Hmm.
address those, but again, that's not this episode.
Yes, yes. So, in talking about this, maybe you can do some soul searching and see if there's any curses that you want to break. But we're going to talk about the positive generational influences that we will, again, sometimes refer to as generational blessings, because they truly are blessings, those things that get passed down that impact us in ways that we may even take for granted.
Yeah, and research shows that generations do or can have a positive impact on many generations. So, in the description of this episode, you'll see a link to an article where a study was done in Oregon of a couple of families, three generations of Oregon families, where they saw at the end that a positive vibe or
Mm-hmm.
positive influences have transcended multiple generations of families. And so, really, this is just another point of discussion as to why we as parents, and you all listen who are parents, want to think about your role not only in your kids' lives, but your
Mm-hmm.
grandkids, your great grandkids, because you
Mm-hmm.
serve an instrumental role in how they will grow up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's really really important to us, and it didn't really hit me the way that I thought it would until my grandmother passed,
Yeah.
right? And so you don't want it to be when your significant loved one passes that you reflect on this stuff. You want to kind of reflect on it now, have conversations now, ask them questions, right? Of
Hmm.
how they raise kids or how they live their life, because you just never know.
Yeah. And that was something I really appreciated about that article. So definitely encourage everyone to check it out. A nice read. But the importance of positivity that passes down in generations affects you as a person, but your parenting, which affects your kids and your grandkids. And this is a recurring theme that we often mention. This
Yep.
is the Parenting Potential Podcast. And so you reaching your potential in your family allows you to reach your potential as a parent that impacts the rest of your family line. So super important. So glad to dive into this whole topic today.
Hmm.
We can get started with kind of what we.
Ladies first.
All right.
So, what we decided to do is come up with three. Now, there's many, many more, but for the purposes of keeping this episode to a decent,
Sizable.
sizable, digestible
That's right.
chunk, we want to only focus on three,
Mhm.
and always happy to share more. If you're interested, feel free to make the comment in the comment section,
Mhm.
or email us. And that's a little plug real quick is for the reflections that you'll be given or prompt. We do have a parenting potential podcast reflections journal template that you could get access to if you send an email to the email listed in the description. Okay.
And then also just joining our Patreon to hear our reflections as we continue to discuss this topic and some of the food for thought that we gained from what we're discussing today. So I will start with basically three of the most poignant, positive generational influences that I have taken from my family line. And number one is the importance of God in your life. And I
Mm-hmm.
most distinctly will say that my grandparents and my mom have really shown that in the influence of my family line, keeping God at the center. And not only, and this is a really big key, not only was the importance shown through words, but through actions and through the
Mm,
way that they're living their life.
yeah.
And I think that's one of the most impactful thing about all of these generational influences, blessings, and again about the curses, which we aren't getting in today, but it's that these lessons were shown more than told.
That's important, right? I think you hear this a lot in reading books, articles, videos. It's kids learn more by what they see
Hmm.
than what they hear. Right?
Yeah,
I didn't mean to
and
cut
what
you
you
off, but
say.
I just wanted
No,
to reiterate that point. It's extremely important that you emphasize that.
yeah, yeah, because I noticed that with understanding the importance of God, I just saw it in their actions. My grandparents, my mom, like they didn't have to say it too often, specifically or directly.
Hmm.
God is the most important thing, although they did. It was seeing them behave in what I learned to be godly ways, or spending time in church, reading their Bible, praying, them just discussing the importance of prayer, them encouraging me to pray, praying for me, praying over me, those types of things that I just constantly saw.
Hmm.
And it wasn't just for a certain occasion or, we pray before meals. It didn't seem ritualistic. It felt, and
Authentic, consistent,
yes,
disciplined, and
ingrained.
mhm.
Yeah. And so I think there was almost no other choice than for it to be an influence that passed down, because I I couldn't have avoided it even if I wanted to. It was ingrained. It was in ways subconscious, I think, just the way that they navigated through life because God was at the center of them. I learned that from young age. I didn't need to be told it when other things were already ingrained in my mind. it was in the fabric of my being.
But even I would say that sometimes, even when you're taught something at a young age, it might not last in your
Mhm.
adulthood if you truly don't believe in it, right? So
Mhm.
let's take this example of your family and showing you the power of being connected to God. If you truly didn't believe it and you just did what you were told because that's what you did, you'd grow up most likely not having a reason why you believe in it and probably move away, right? I've seen
Mhm.
that happen plenty of
Yes.
times. I know this is not a Christian podcast, but it's just a podcast where we're just honest and authentic. And I think that we just don't want people to believe that because it's a positive influence that affected you, it's going to affect someone else because they have to
Mhm.
believe and understand the power and the benefit of it, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's true. And I think part of it is because of the way in which it was a foundation of their lives and
Yeah.
of their parenting and grandparenting. It became a foundation of my life where
Hmm.
I guess I did believe it
Yeah.
in the same way that there were so many other things that they did in raising me or impacting me throughout my younger years
Hmm.
that I grew to just believe and take for face value as well. If that makes sense, I didn't feel like it was demonstrated as it was more powerful. Here's how I'll say it. It was more powerful, I think, because it wasn't just constantly said
Right.
or we're going to church because you have to come on, go with me. Now, definitely, it was kind of that too.
You're gonna
Like,
go rather
yes,
whether or not you believe, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. But it wasn't just that. Like, you have to go, and then when you turn 18, you could do what you want. It was we go for this. It was the understanding of the importance of it. It was seeing it time and time again reiterated through their actions constantly.
Yeah. Do you think though, because I know your grandparents, your mom, right? Who they are, they're amazing people, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that you probably saw how amazing individuals they are,
Mhm.
right? And as a result, you've seen that they become who they are from their connection to God. Then I need to be connected to God if I want to be my best self. That's
Mhm.
I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
Maybe subconsciously
Yeah.
that's what you were thinking as a kid,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where you want to be, right? Because
Mhm.
I think influences are basically there's something about that person in your life
Mhm.
that you admire, that you aspire to be, and because you aspire to be that, you start to see maybe things
Mhm.
that they have done that you want to emulate to be the person you aspire to be,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Oh, I love that. Mhm. Totally can agree with that.
I'm on the road today. I'm
Yeah.
feeling. I had my vitamin this morning. We went to church
Um,
today. All right. No, I'm just kidding.
yes,
But
yes, no, but I love that, and I think that's a perfect way to kind of wrap mine up in a bow. I want to hear your first one.
it's very similar, right? I actually wrote down the importance of being connected to God through prayer and being connected to a church, really like-minded people. And my grandmother, for as long as I can remember, she went to church by herself for the most part. I know that there was times when my grandfather would go, but for as long as I can remember, being 32 years old, right? I guess I have a good memory, right? But
Mhm.
it was my grandmother waking up in the morning, making breakfast, and going to church. And anyone could join her, but she wasn't going to get on you if you didn't go.
Mhm.
But she went anyways, consistently, even to the point when she was um, not very sick, but she was sick and could not make it to church. She
Mhm.
went online. Now, my grandma, with the whole FaceTime thing and internet, all that stuff, she needed help with that,
Mhm.
but she sought out the help to make sure she was consistently being connected to God. And one thing that I learned when I was living with my grandmother before we got married in 2016 for a short period of time is that she actually prayed for everybody often. I never knew that. I mean, we would pray before dinner, right? Don't touch that bread, don't touch that soda until we finish praying. Yeah, like that was always
Mhm.
a staple when I lived with her growing up. But she had told me she prays for said cousin, said um, son or daughter or grandchild, right? And so I think that from what I learned from my grandmother, prayer is going to connect you to God. Going to church, which I have to do a better job at this, is going to help you stay connected no matter what. If you're consistent with that, it could only help you with your spirituality. Now, there's other
Mm-hmm.
things you have to do, but my grandmother did those things
Mm-hmm.
consistently,
Yeah.
consistently. So that's one generational influence I felt.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so my next one is the importance of your family.
Hmm.
For short, I'll say it that way. But what I really learned was showing love and compassion towards your family, your sisters, almost above all else. And what I mean when I say that is, I remember my mom often reminding my sisters and I growing up, if ever we were unkind towards each other, that we love each other, right? At the
Hmm.
end of the day, whatever little tiff we get into or argument, disagreement, we love each other so much. And how can we exhibit this love or restraint against like neighbors, friends at school, strangers so easily and not towards our sisters who will always care and love
Yeah,
for us?
that's powerful.
And it really made me stop and think at times, of course, in moments when you're hot headed and fighting with your sister or whoever,
Hmm.
you can be like just so angry and worked up. But it really did make me think, how is it so easy for me to, when friends at school would be even more annoying at times or whatever, I could always exhibit this type of self control towards them and maybe not lash out in this comfortable way that I do so easily with my sisters who, like, I clearly know love me more
Hmm.
and I love them more. And it's so easy, I think, for people in general to do that towards their loved
Hmm.
ones. But I will say that I can really credit that influence of your family is your core people. They are who have your back and you have their back. And so you need to behave in that way. Um, that is what I credit to being where I am today, having the connection that I do have with my sisters. I know hearing people throughout the years will comment and say, "Oh, you guys are so close," or this and that, in ways that I kind of just felt like I thought for the most part, that's how siblings would be.
Yeah.
And we actually aren't even that close in age, considering how close I feel towards them.
Hmm.
And I think it's because it was this ingrained influence that you guys love each other. You understand each other in ways. You have been through similar things. You are your support network. And 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, when your best friend currently may not even be someone you speak to
Yeah.
anymore, your
Point.
sisters are still there. And that is to extend beyond the sisters. But I think that's what really ingrained in me is that, yeah, this love or this kindness towards others, very important. You should be kind towards
Hmm.
everyone. But if you can so easily show that towards somebody who, in a blink of an eye, could turn their back on you if you said the wrong thing or did the wrong thing one day, then how can you not be that generous towards your sisters who are always there for you or your family who is always? And although I'm not perfect, and there are times that maybe I do lash in ways towards my most loved ones,
I think we all do to an
of
extent, right?
course,
I guess
yeah,
we take them for granted, right? They will
yes,
always love me no matter how mean, which you shouldn't, how mean I get in that
yes,
moment. Whereas
yes.
a friend might be like, well, I don't have to deal with you. I'm
Yeah,
leaving, right?
peace.
Like, I mean, we don't even live in the same state, so I really don't have to see you as often. So if you're
Exactly.
gonna be nasty to me, then I'm just gonna go ahead and end this relationship. But you shouldn't do that with family.
Yeah. And I think for me, I know that like my family, no matter what, I will always have a love for them and always be there for them. And I know they will always be the same to me. And I really think that's an important influence that I want to go through our family. That no
Hmm.
matter how you ever feel towards something your family member does or whatever, that you should always always have a grace for them.
Yeah, and it's funny because we just watched a video yesterday. I showed you a video with the girls, Anaya and Leilani. For those
Yes.
of you
Oh
who
my gosh.
don't know, those are our two daughters. Oldest is Anaya, almost 4, and the youngest is Leilani. She's 15 months. And me and your sister Janae, took them to a sculpture garden in our neighborhood, and it was very windy.
Mhm.
And Anaya was just walking off. We don't know where she was going. And so I just wanted to make sure she stayed near us. And so told Leilani to go get your sister, go get your sister. And she actually went over there and grabbed her hand. Now, Anaya is like twice her size.
Yeah.
She tried her best to kind of
Guide
wrangle
her back.
Anaya in, and it fell. But like you can tell she was endearing to her. And there's been plenty of videos and times where we've seen her just
Yeah.
be so endearing to Anaya, and the same way Anaya being endearing to her. And it just reminded me of you and your sisters, where that stuff has to be taught at a young age, right? And
Mhm.
it's never too late. But think about, for those listening who have young kids, who you have multiple kids and they're young, ingrain that in their mindset now, that they are your most valuable tribe members, right? We
Mhm.
talked about tribe in our last episode. If you didn't see that episode, go back and look at that.
Mhm.
But tribe members should always be held to a high regard. And so if you hold them to high regard, you got to always have respect for them. Now, I know I need to work on a couple of things, right?
Yeah.
We're not perfect, but at least we know and can acknowledge that, like what Monet's saying,
Yeah.
the importance of family.
Mhm. And there's so often that I've heard from friends or whoever, oh, yeah, my sister gets on my nerves, or I'm not close to my brother, or those different things. And I get it. Sometimes certain things happen and dynamics, you never know what goes into them. But it's almost like the rhetoric that math gets for being a hard
Hmm.
subject, and everybody says math is hard. I think we almost laugh at, oh yeah, siblings, you don't get along. But truly, if you really go into that and decode, like, why should it be that way? And hopefully it's not that way. And you want, as parents, for your children as siblings, of course, to get along. And so that's another reflection of, for you to reach your potential as parents, think about that too. When you're raising your kids,
Yeah.
they will be siblings to each other,
Yep.
and how you want them to interact as.
Yeah. And then think about, if you actually are living out what you're telling them to do. If the family is important, are you cutting people off? Right?
Mhm.
Are you
Not speaking to one of your
right? Are you being an
siblings, or.
example of what they should follow?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? And I think that, in many ways we all could do better, right? And
Mhm.
so I really do, I like that one. I think that's extremely important, because it's one of our pillars that we live by, right? Is that
Mhm.
family's important.
Yeah.
um that's a good one. So I'm looking at my notes. I like to take notes on these podcasts now. So the one I have here is the importance of getting an education.
Mhm.
I did not know that my grandmother was on her way to get a doctorate. Um, and she
Mm.
didn't, because my aunt was born and she wanted to focus more on the family. But my grandmother, born in the 40s, right? Um, you know, in the South, she actually had to pick cotton, with her family on a farm, right? And she did not like that.
Mhm.
And so she knew the only way to get out of this was to go to school, right? Not the only way, but she knew that to have a better life,
Mhm.
she needed an education. That was way back when. And even when she got an education, she decided to get her master's. She tried to better herself. And I know growing up that it was important to them that we get an education, because they would give us money if we got A's,
There
right?
you
My
go.
grandfather would slip a $5 bill, which back in the day for me was, wow, I can get 2 slices of pizza,
Yeah.
uh, a barrel juice,
All
some
your
now
candies.
laters, and
Mhm.
some Wise chips. We didn't have Doritos like that. It was 25 cents for those Bravo chips. But for those New Yorkers out there, you know what I'm talking about, right? Bravo. But the point being is that they really wanted to emphasize the importance of education. And the story I have was, when I was in high school. My grandfather worked for the unemployment office for the county that he lived in. And there was a woman who came. one of his coworkers, who was just so ecstatic that her daughter got into college, that she brought in chips and cupcakes just to celebrate her daughter getting to college. That college, that university, was Cornell University. And I guess maybe a couple of weeks later, I don't know, maybe she got in early. I forgot how that worked, the timing of it. But anyways, when I told my grandparents I got into Cornell, my grandfather
Mhm.
was ecstatic, right? He went and bought some cheese and crackers and went to work. And he had asked me to send him a copy of my acceptance letter. And when he passed away 10 years ago and we were cleaning out his office, I found that letter
Oh.
that he wanted a copy of. It was my acceptance letter to Cornell. But it made him so happy, and I was so glad that both of my grandparents got to see me graduate from Cornell. Right?
Mhm.
I was looking at the pictures of just my grandmother, and that one came up with both of them being there, and so they just valued education because of what it did for their family tree. It
Mhm.
allowed for them to buy a house in the '60s, and that house is still standing to this day, and to send their kids to college.
Mhm.
And so now, looking back on everything, right, reflecting, you can just see how much of an influence that had on my life. Imagine if they didn't go to college. Imagine if my grandma decided, you know what, I'm not going to go to North Carolina A&T. I'm just going to stay and do something local, right?
Mhm.
Not to say that she wouldn't have a good life, but maybe she wouldn't have met my grandfather,
Oh yeah,
right?
100%.
So yeah, I would just say that the importance of education is something that I hold true, but only because I saw that my grandparents held it true
Mhm.
as a true indicator of success in their lives. So
Mhm. Yeah. And it that really does tie into my next one. And as you were speaking, I was thinking how it is related. But basically, let me say it. One of the generational positive influences that has really been passed from my parents is the importance of achievement, I guess, overall.
yeah,
And one component of it for sure is education. But what I think I most got from them is kind of this reach for the stars type of approach to life in general and doing your best in whatever it is you're endeavoring to do. And I feel like I can tease that apart more now, maybe that I'm older, that although there was a time where the focus was very much on this educational academic achievement when I was
hmm
in high school and that type of thing, I think it was also on achieving at what your greatest potential could have been in whatever
hmm
it was you were going to do.
hmm
I, early on in life, I think had expressed or shown that I would be interested in science, medicine, health, becoming a doctor. And so there was so often throughout my life that I felt like there was always this emphasis on you need to do so well in school, grades, straight A's, doing all of these impressive programs or whatever the case may be.
yeah,
And there were times that I would jokingly express to my parents like, oh, like I hate that you made me go through this. But I think what was really important that I took from that, and through going through it, I would like to further down our family line, is just the achieving your potential regardless of what it was.
yeah,
Because I do think that if I did not want to be a doctor, but something else, maybe something that didn't require that type of academic rigor, not to say that they would have been, no, no, education is the only way, although they would have still wanted me to do well in school.
yeah,
I think it was providing this mindset for me and this supportive structure of how can you achieve that, whatever it is you want. So if I were to become an actress or want to become an actress, like, okay, like maybe really pushing me to do all of the things that would have aligned to create that and to make that a
Mm,
reality. Because I've seen that even as I've gotten older, or at times when I've expressed to my mom, I kind of think that I want to do this, or maybe I've said, I've thought about, like, if I didn't go the medical route, what I kind of thought maybe this was something else I would have done. And just the conversations we've had, I can see that the focus was more so on, okay, well, if that was going to be the path you would have taken, maybe it wouldn't have been as defined as the medical path, where you have to go to school for this many years and get into this and onto that. But okay, what can you do to really boost up your abilities to pursue that path
right.
instead? And I feel like my sisters have also taken that same type of thing from my parents, and what was expressed of, in order to achieve what you want to achieve, set yourself up in the best way,
Yeah.
that is just going to it's going to happen. It's almost like a given. Because in the same way I had peers throughout my journey that I've seen who have been on the edge of their seats hoping they'd get into a college, or a specific college of their choice, or wishing and praying that they would get accepted to medical school or wherever it was. Although I wasn't like, it's a given, of course I will. The way in which I
You knew you
was
were going somewhere.
influenced, yeah,
Yeah.
I think I was never going to be, but so nervous, because I felt like, yeah, I'm going to get this
You
because
had
I
no
set myself
regrets.
up.
You had
Yes.
no regrets. You felt like
Yes.
you put it all on the table.
Yes. And that's, of course, what I want for my children and everybody in our family line moving forward, that their options do not get limited by what they've done, because they can truly say they have reached their greatest potential. And that's what I really want for us in our parenting, that there will be places where maybe we find we have fallen short, or we wish certain things would have went a different way. But if we set ourselves up that we have educated ourselves in the best ways, we
Hmm.
have had these discussions, we have read articles or watched programs and that type of thing, spoken to other parents, and we truly feel like we've equipped ourselves and we're living out the best we can, that even if things fall in a little different way, that you have achieved.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, it made me think this. You should work to the best of your ability, have grit
Mm-hmm.
for a set goal. And let's say you don't get to that goal, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's what you became in the process of trying to pursue said goal.
Yeah.
Think about, like, this is take you for example, the amount of grit you had to have throughout your journey in residency and in medical school and residency. And I'll just be transparent with y'all. This woman is amazing, but she had to go through, she gave birth to two girls.
Mm-hmm.
She had really bad eczema flare ups that affected your
Mm-hmm.
ability to study.
Yes.
But you persevering through that, the trophy wasn't you becoming a doctor. The
Mm-hmm.
trophy was what you became as a person in pursuit of being trying to be a doctor, right?
Yeah.
Think about how much you've grown, the callous that you had to put in your mind just to be able to get through some of these challenging obstacles, right? Let's be honest, y'all. We all have obstacles in pursuing anything,
Mm-hmm.
but it's how you handle those obstacles that make you the person you become. It's not you becoming that person you want to become, or that said goal, achieving that goal. It's really what you became in order to achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. What you became, and like what you put in,
Yeah.
because that's part of it too. Because yeah, throughout the way, it's putting in the blood, sweat, tears, or
And there was some blood,
all
sweat, and
that.
tears.
There were.
Right.
Yes, but no, I 100% agree with that.
Yes, I like that one. So you had God, family, and achievement.
Mhm.
And so my last one is working hard. Now it kind of
Mhm.
coincides with
Yeah.
everything we're talking about, but I'm just gonna be frank. Our grandparents, I know my grandparents, grew up in a time where when as an African American individual, it was not easy, and it still isn't. But that's no excuse. I'll say
Mhm.
that. And they didn't use it as an excuse, but they knew that they had to work hard at whatever they were doing in order to be better, for
Mhm.
their family to be better. They worked.
Mhm.
They worked. And I think that's something that I value, that they taught me through action, not words, that nothing's going to be given to you
Mhm.
ever.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever going to be given to you. You have to work for it. Now, you can work smart too, but you have to work hard. And I think the challenges they had to face and still succeed just shows you that they had resiliency,
Mhm.
but they had to work hard to get through
Yeah.
said situations. You had something to say?
No, but it does make, well, it makes me think, like you said, it's no excuse, and I agree there's no excuse, but it's that message that I feel like maybe you have gotten as growing up, and maybe a lot of people who do share that identity to being African American in America, especially at this time. But as time goes on, there's little remnants of it too. That at times you may have to work even harder. So yes, it is no excuse,
Yeah.
and the way you could end up leaning on it as an excuse if you don't be careful is seeing it as there are things stacked up against me that I have to work harder than other people who don't have it stacked up against you.
Yeah.
And yes, that is probably true in a lot of instances. And so go ahead and work
Yeah.
harder.
So what? I mean, no one's, and I don't want to come off y'all as being like insensitive, but I do think that I'm in a place now. I'm heading to a place in my life where I have to not let myself give excuses on why
Mhm.
I can't do something. And so, my grandparents, there were obstacles they had to overcome.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So what? Figure it out, right? And the story I have is funny. It's correlated. So I know Monet's looking at me like, "Oh, you're telling a story. It has nothing to do with it." I promise. There's a reason for this.
I'm gonna rein
But
you in if not.
rein me in if I'm not, right? But my grandmother believed in figuring it out. So working hard and figure it out on your own. Always ask for help, but some things you just gotta
Mhm.
go through it. I was living with her for a time period as I was transitioning.
Yeah.
Monet's like, "Where you go with
I
this?" Right?
know. No, I know actually what you're
Yeah.
gonna say.
And so it was only for a very short period until Monet and I got married and we would move in together, right? But I was living with her for a couple of months, and then I was going to transition to Airbnb for a couple of months closer to my job. And the day that I moved into the Airbnb, I left my grandmother's house, went to this Airbnb. I see these little round balls on my windowsill in my room, and I'm like, "Oh man, this is interesting." Me
And
be
what were these round balls looking like?
Well, I grew up in New York, and so we had, you know, those droppings before. I've seen that. They're mouse droppings or mice droppings, right? So then I'm like, okay, dang, there's a mouse. A mouse was probably in here, but I always clean up, sanitize things down. I'm good money. I see this thing, this Mickey Mouse character.
But not quite the
Not the
same.
same, right? We actually live in Orlando, so we know what he looks like. This was not Mickey Mouse, y'all. This was a straight up mouse running across from under my bed to the dresser, and I might have squealed like a little girl because I'm like, "There's no way." So the first thing I do, I call grandma. "Hey, grandma, there's a mouse in my room." Her response was, "Okay." You know what I wanted that response to be? Tell me I can come back and live with you. But I knew, like, for those of you who have old school grandparents, when they say okay or mm-hmm, I'll see, I don't know, that means no. And so my grandma was telling me without saying it that you ain't coming back here. So figure it out. Get some mouse traps, right? And that's what I did. Get some mouse traps. I called exterminator, all these different things. But the idea was that you need to figure it out. Cool. You have a mouse in your house. Well, get it out. You're not coming back here. You got to figure it out. Work hard to figure it out. And so was I good? Was I good in that story? Yes.
Yes.
When they gave me approval of the story. Good.
It's just you got to finish it up right. Tie it up. Let's
Tie it up. Let's
hear
tie it all up.
it.
So sometimes we think that other people are going to pull us out of a situation, but sometimes that person or people aren't going to be there.
Mhm.
You have to work to figure out how to get yourself out of said situation. So I would
Mhm.
just say that my grandmother, just tying us up, believed that you can help yourself out of most situations with prayer, right?
Yeah.
But and on top of that, prayer without work is dead. So
Mm.
you need to work and
Yes.
figure this out, right? I mean, I'd never seen her ask anyone for anything for as long as I can remember, right? She worked for it. My grandfather worked for it, and I think that's something that they passed down to me
Mhm.
to hopefully pass down to my kids and
Mhm.
my grandkids and great grandkids. That you have to work hard, you have to persevere, you have to find ways to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so funny that, and telling that a lot of yours were kind of similar, or like kind of worked hand in hand with my positive generational influences. And as a little cliffhanger for what our reflections will be, I would love for us to dive more into how we really are going to make sure that all of ours do get passed down. But did want to touch on exactly what our reflection prompt is for this week's episode. For you guys, as you're reflecting on what we shared, this reflection will be for you to write a letter as if you were your child 30 years in the future. And this letter would be addressed to you, the parent, thanking you for the following morals, lessons, sayings, traditions, etc. that you have set. So we want you to go ahead and create those morals, lessons, sayings, traditions starting today and write those out. And you can at the same time identify some of those generational curses that you want to stop, but really the focus should be on listing specifically 3 positive influences that you want to leave the next generation to be passed down long after you are no longer here.
And let's again, we're not going to go into detail on this, but generational curses are real. Everybody has them,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't address them, they might overcast the blessings or influences, right? So you want
Yeah.
to make sure that not in this reflection, but really try to think through those generational curses and how you as an individual can stop it before it affects your kids,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, go ahead.
And even thinking about things in yourself that maybe you want to change. And if you were to think about it, do you identify with any of those characters being things that you have learned or have been ingrained, maybe subconsciously, that have been brought down to you from the way your parents act, how you maybe have witnessed other family members act? Because that could be a good indicator that this is a generational curse in your family, that if you don't identify, you could unknowingly bring along and perpetuate into your offspring as well.
Good stuff. And so, again, if you want that reflections journal, feel free to email the email address in the description below. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Share this with someone you feel can benefit
And
from it, or they can benefit from it.
yeah,
And
join our Patreon so you can catch our reflections, but also all the other content we're going to share. You just getting a little closer to our tribe and getting our other gems and pearls that.
templates. I know I've joked before with other parents at one of our
Yes.
presentations about spreadsheets. So we'll be pumping out some spreadsheets that we actually use and showing you how to use them to benefit your family.
Mm-hmm.
Other templates.
And then opportunities for you to even reach out to us and express other content that you want from us, because
Yes,
we want to be open books. We want to share all that we have learned. And again, we're not experts.
on our experiences. Or we're not experts, but we are experts on our experiences. And so we just share what we feel works for us.
Mm-hmm.
It might not work for you, right? So that's why we're not experts in that field, but we are just sharing practical
Yes.
ways in which we have learned to be better than we were yesterday. And
Mm-hmm.
part of this too is we're learning as well. We
Yes.
have so many steps that we need to take to get to where we want to be. So if there's anything you want to share with us to help us learn
Oh, yes, please
that our
do.
tribe could benefit from, please share it. Please send it.
And just put a comment in the bottom in our comments of this video, little praying hands or something, just telling us like, yes, generational blessings, we're here for it.
Yeah, and let us know what generational blessings or influences you recognize
Yes.
for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So until next time, we'll be in episode 3 of
Ooh,
season 2 of the Parenting Potential podcast and a few. But in the meantime, go ahead and do your reflections.
yeah. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. I really did. I'm glad we talked about this
Me too.
today.
We got to get started on reflections, though.
That's right.
All right. Till next time, y'all. Peace.
Love ya.